والصلوات والسلام على رسول الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. What is money? Quick overview. A money basically is a unit of value. If you see an object and you want to give it a value, you can say it's worth 3 apples. You can say it's worth $5. You can say it's worth a quarter of a mountain. Point is that you are putting a kind of value on another object. And that value is subjective. Like I said, you used pieces of mountains, you used apples, whatever the currency that you want to use it in. So money is in different forms. We had rocks, we had beads, we have metal coins, we have paper money, and currently we have the digital money. So it's similar to how when we have meters, we have, which is a unit for distance, we have feet, inches, kilometers. If you have grams, pounds, which is used for weight, liters, cups for capacity. So just like in that conversion, that mathematical conversion of units, money is a unit that we use. So to understand money at the most fundamental, basic level, we need to go further back to the earliest forms of money. Remember that money came in different forms. They were tangible and intangible, meaning it was either in your hands or it was just in your mind. For example, if someone like owe you debt, you remember that debt. Now, we go back to the island of Yap. The island of Yap is known for the Rye stone currency, and it's unique in its utility. The Rye stone is the name that was given to this limestone that they carved out, and I have a picture over here, right here. It looks like that. So you can see it's like a donut. So if you have an article here that I read through, and it basically talks about the history of the Yap people and their use of this stone as a way of transacting. So the Rye stone is a limestone, and this limestone was rare on the island of on this island of Yap. So they were supposed to go to the island of Palau, which is nearby. But remember, this is all a bunch of islands together, like an archipelago, and we're talking about current day Micronesia. So there's a lot of these islands around that are nearby. On their island specifically, there were no limestones. When they go to the island of Palau, there were limestones, and this was very valuable. It was rare, and also at the time there were no precious metals or anything of that sort in that island. Limestone was seen as the most valuable form of currency for them. Now, but keep in mind, we're not talking about little rock-shaped coins here. As you saw from the picture, you could probably see they are very big. They can be as high as 12 feet and as heavy as up to 5 tons. And you wouldn't really move it. Once you put it in a place that's settled, it would just stay there. I mean, if just to move one rock from one island to another, you needed a group of people on a canoe to bring it over. And the value of the value of this is based on the effort, the amount of people that died. All this puts into the factor, as well as how big it is, how heavy it is. All of that puts higher value to the stone that they got. They would also get smaller stones that they would carry around to do quick transactions. So that's how they would use this rock as a way to collect the transaction that they would make with each other. So basically, the people of Yap would travel by canoe to the island of Palau, search for the stones, carve it, and then transport it back. And it was not an easy task. You can guess that there were some problems, some calamities back and forth bringing this stone. And like I said, the value is based on how difficult it was. We're talking about the proof of work theory here. That the more work that was done, the more sacrifice that was made, everything that was lost in trying to get this, the more that was lost, the more valuable it is, as well as the bigger it is and the heavier. So an example would be, let's say two people were transacting. One person gave two chickens, and the other person gave the other person the cow. So there was a transaction here. This transaction would be carved into a small section of the stone. It is now in the ledger basically forever or until that stone is destroyed. So that's one example. Another one is if person loaned out an animal or service, he did something for that person, that would be carved out on the ledger, showing that the debtor owes what on that date. So basically, this is how they used the stone and why it was so valuable. It's basically their ledger, their public ledger, because everybody could see it, everyone that's on the island. However, you can see, being that this was one of the earliest forms of money, it had many issues. Eventually, the currency that they used fell through once you had explorers from outside, mainly Europe at the time, arrive and see that these stones, they can go find these stones in large amounts, put them on their big ships, and bring it to the people and trade with them. And you could obviously guess that if you own all the money supply, if you can get all these stones, you could basically own the people of yeah, own the entire island. So this massively dropped the value of these rhinestones since there were so many. Uh, there were so many of these being transported at the time. The supply was too much, and there wasn't much effort needed to get these. So it dropped the value, basically worthless. So this example is a way to show that money has operated in a tiny island with a small number of people with really nothing valuable in there. Yet something they found to be valuable, and they used that as the economic system in their island. So that's what we understood about money from there. On top of that, we understand that if you have a weak form of money, that if it cannot adapt, then it will cause a lot of problems. The entire Yap population basically came under the rule of these explorers since they bought out everything with a poor currency. So, regardless of that, what you need to understand here is that money is something that we can look at to be valuable, and if it's something that we can all agree on, that can be the system. And that's the whole idea of Bitcoin, is that if you understand these rules, you agree to these rules, and you want to have these rules enforced on your money, then you enter the system. You leave the fiat system and you enter the Bitcoin standard. So it worked within that small community, just like how gold did. But tangible assets and barter system, when you trade, only works in small economies and in smaller amounts. You can imagine if I need to buy $100,000 of something, I'm not going to be carrying around $100,000 of gold. So, like I said, the gold system and the barter system only works when you have small economies and doing smaller transactions. In the global stage, there has to be faster, easier, and safer forms of payments. I mean, just imagine carrying a lot of gold around. That's not safe at all. The stones eventually evolved to shells, to metals, to paper, to what we currently see the digital forms of money, such as the crypto coins, which you should not even bother to look at, the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, and what we Muslims try to strive for, which is Bitcoin. So value is basically derived from the work put in for that object. And that object becomes the currency, so as long as it absorbs the increasing people that are putting more money in, the more businesses that are using this, it should be able to absorb that. As well as the currency should have a 1-to-1 ratio. One Bitcoin should be always one Bitcoin. So money is what we perceive to have value enough to be traded for anything. So if we all agree that that is money, we can use that to obtain whatever we want, just how much of it. So money has seen its different forms throughout time, and it's basically whatever the status quo needs. For example, right now, we need a strong money to replace this haram and dying fiat money. So with the first understanding of money and from the history of the rhinestone, you can kind of see that value is kind of subjective to a point. For example, the stones, they believe to be having a lot of value. Obviously, to us, the explorers, they're just rocks. So their value has a subjective point to it. However, that the need for that stone came from an objective need. They needed a way to record transactions and put their value on something that was hard to get. Nobody could change it. So to them in that island, they found that the limestone, which was a rare stone, and they were able to use this material to do what they wanted to do in their economy, the transactions, the record, the ledger. So in their case, it was the rhinestone that was rare and difficult to obtain. So it became a working economy. But to outsiders like the explorers or like us, if we were to enter there, it's worthless because we can obtain these stones in large amounts easily, causing the rhinestones to be worthless. So in other words, money has been evolving for the betterment over time. It's not like money has gotten worse. It's just trying to adapt what the current economy is demanding. That's where Bitcoin comes in, and that's the next step in our money evolution. But more importantly, that's the next step in putting our ummah out there in the forefront of fighting the enemy. And the enemy is the money that that the fiat money that we're trying to fight against. So I hope that you are able to understand better on what is money. It's simply just a way for us to put a value on something using whatever currency or units we would want. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.